We can't buy meat, fish, chicken, or even cheese anymore. We mostly eat bread with tea now. I have never experienced such a deplorable life. I go to sleep, wake up, and the prices have gone up. What is Turkey's current inflation rate? 36.08% for the month of December. According to a nonprofit ENA group, the annual 2020 inflation rate was around 82.81% in Turkey. To encourage continued domestic saving, the government recently announced a new policy. If the lira's decline against major currencies exceeds the bank's short-term deposit interest rates, the government will pay the holders of the lira deposits of the difference. What are they doing? They are printing money. Hello and welcome to this episode of TNT's Inflation Update. My name is Dennis Maynard. I am a real estate broker here in Los Angeles, California. I started the inflation updates in July of 2021 as I was seeing alarming amounts of spending and money printing by the Federal Reserve and Congress. I was finding that most people were not really educated or aware of the impacts of policymaking and spending. And depending on when you were born, most have no memory of the impacts of these policies carry. They were merely viewing it along political party talking points. Unfortunately, we are seeing the results of this dogma, and it's not going to stop affecting everyone for some time. Really, I have two goals with this video. First, I want to educate you on what inflation is and why it's happening. Second, I want to give you some simple steps that you can use to guide your decisions on investments and spending. I will be reviewing in another video what happens to stop inflation and steps to take then. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow. What is inflation? I love this cartoon depicting prices and wages. Inflation is the increase of the overall level of prices. This is typically measured as a percentage of a change in the consumer price index or some other index of the overall price level. This can be anything such as food, energy, or shelter. Hyperinflation is inflation exceeding 50% per month. I often hear people use the term incorrectly, and now you know the definition. Hyperinflation is almost always caused by governments printing too much money. In this image, we can see Deutschmarks being prepared for distribution at the Reichsbank. How bad can it get? Well, Venezuela's inflation rate is currently at 1,197%. It peaked a few years ago at 35,000% in 1 month. The opposite of inflation is deflation. This is the decrease in the overall level of prices. The Great Depression is a fine example of this. So, what creates the value of money? Well, it is money supply and money demand. In other words, it is the amount of money out in the economy at any given point in time and how much of that money is needed to purchase goods and services. This creates an equilibrium point that establishes value. This is known as quantity theory of money, or QTM. Without getting too nerdy on you, if you put more money out into the economy by increasing supply, demand will increase, but the value of the dollar will decrease. This rate of change is the inflation rate, meaning it takes more dollars to buy the same goods. This theory was advocated by Milton Friedman. This leads us to economic principle number 9 from my economics courses. Prices rise when the government prints too much money. The Federal Reserve is printing money through quantitative easing. They do this through open market operations by purchasing long-term treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. They purchase long-term bonds as opposed to short-term bonds to avoid what is known as the liquidity trap. This policy was first introduced during the Great Recession and ended in 2015. It was brought back on March 15, 2020, the day the world shut down from COVID. Currently, the Fed is buying a minimum of $80 billion in treasuries and $40 billion in mortgage-backed securities per month. What is the current inflation rate and how does it affect me? Inflation causes the price of assets to rise. Real estate property values will increase. Cost of borrowing will increase, and lenders will eventually raise rates. Real estate rental rates will increase. Daily needs, goods, and services prices will rise. This just isn't policies produced by the Federal Reserve. This is also due to congressional spending and economic policy being pushed by elected officials. I love this cartoon. Why is inflation a tax? Essentially, wages rise slower than inflation. As cost of goods rise, wages just can't keep up. And the government collects more tax revenue through increased wages, prices, and hidden taxes such as the gas tax. It is estimated across the U.S. that 17% of the cost of fuel is federal and state gas taxes. In California, we currently pay 51 cents per gallon in gas tax. As you can see, the average price per gallon has spiked across the country. When we look at inflation and wages are not keeping up with cost. This means that workers and their salaries have a net loss against increases in price and costs. In case you missed it on the news, inflation is at 7% currently. But gasoline prices have seen around a 50% increase. And when we look at food and shelter, energy prices are pulling those costs upward as well. In fact, all goods and services are being pulled higher by higher energy cost. If there were a button I could press to stop all hydrocarbon usage, I would not press it. It would cause human civilization to come to a halt. Elon Musk. Well, why is that? Out of a 42-gallon barrel of crude oil, just under 24 gallons are used for jet fuel and gasoline. The rest is used for other products and materials. There are over 6,000 products that are made from oil and natural gas, including wind turbine blades, batteries, and solar panels for all those who want pure green energy. And if you're out on your surfboard and you're standing on a product made from oil. Why am I talking about this in an inflation video? Because economic energy policy that is currently being implemented is having a detrimental effect on the prices of our goods and services. You cannot separate the two. When you compound this with labor shortages and labor policy, along with long supply chains, it compounds itself. How bad is it? This is a chart of the Producer Price Index, or PPI. This index tracks what it costs for producers for materials, goods, and parts for production. PPI is currently sitting at 20%, 22% in November. This means that the prices that they are paying are going to be passed on to you, the consumer. Prices are going to go up further. We will talk more about this in a minute. We have also seen home price appreciation. This initially was due to a lack of supply and a shift in demand towards single-family homes in suburbs versus urban housing. However, all increased material costs are going to be passed through to the consumer from new home builders. New home prices will continue to go up. On this map, we can see Boise, Idaho experienced the greatest increase in home prices. You can also see that rental rates across the country have increased since March 2020, with San Francisco, San Jose, and DC lagging the rest of the country. This chart demonstrates inflation rates at different time intervals. Essentially, how much have prices changed from 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years ago? When we look at the 5-year average of inflation, prices are 15.5% higher than they were in 2017. Prices are 8.5% higher than before the pandemic began. I use this analysis to determine if inflation was transitory. It's not. Here we can see the wall of inflation over time. What effect does the money supply have on inflation? Here's the rate of inflation and the M2 money supply from the last 2 years. It's pretty hard to argue the comparison. When we look at last year, it's very obvious. Here we see a side-by-side of the GDP and the money supply. The major point of this slide is that GDP was normalized in October 2020. We should have curbed some of the printing and spending at that time. So, who spent more, Republicans or Democrats? Since January 25th, 2021, when President Biden took office, Democrats and the Fed win the money printing prize with all the spending packages based on the growth in the money supply of 11.9%, versus the start of the pandemic and Republicans at 4.7%. One could argue that the omnibus bill that was passed in December of 2020 hadn't taken effect yet. The total increase in the money supply since the start of the pandemic, 16.6%. We're not done yet. As the Federal Reserve has indicated its ending QE, they are still purchasing bonds and assets. If the Fed was to continue its asset purchases at a rate of $120 billion per month, it would increase the money supply by 6.7% in 1 year. Congressional spending and energy and labor policy by the White House and supply chain issues will account for the remainder of the inflation. The Federal Reserve will need to increase interest rates and reserve requirements if done in conjunction with ending QE. Otherwise, I anticipate ending QE will have minimal effect on reducing the money supply. We also need to see congressional spending controls and revised energy and labor policy by this administration to get out of this quagmire. What do? There are basic hedges against inflation: real estate, gold and silver, commodities, stocks, TIPS or Treasury inflation protected securities, and REITs. Real estate specifically hedges against inflation as property values increase. Borrowing costs will go higher, and rental rates can quickly adjust to the increases in inflation. We have not seen the end of inflation. I expect it to pick up dramatically over the next year. There are still many factors we have covered that will lead to higher inflation this year. I know this was like drinking from a fire hose for some. You made it to the end. Congrats. If you want to discuss your situation or get a better understanding of real estate investment, please reach out. I'm happy to answer questions.